Chase was always looking for that next thrill. He rode four-wheelers, he rode his motorcycle, anything that would give him some type of adrenaline. And he was like, Mom, all my friends are dead. They've all died from addiction. And at night, I'm always thinking about them. They drove 2 hours that night to Bardstown and got her prescription. So they got back home and Chase took it and died. He took one pill. I'm doing it to save one life. If one parent doesn't have to feel like I feel, I would be forever grateful. Would thank God that nobody would ever have to feel like this. And I know that's not possible. I mean, you know, I know that we live in a fallen world, but if it helps one person, it's worth it. Chase was a ball of energy from the time he was born. He was diagnosed with ADHD at like 7. They wanted to put him on medicine. I was that parent that was like, I don't know, like I listened to the doctors, but I also did my own research. I put him on the medicine, but then about 2 months into it, I felt like it changed who he was, so I took him back off. In hindsight, I don't know if I should have left him on it. I don't know, because I do know most kids that are ADHD, a lot of them go on to become addicts, struggling with addiction. But anyway, I took him off of it. And I would say by 13 or 14, Chase started using. Started smoking. I know at 14 he was smoking. And 15, 16, smoking marijuana, drinking alcohol. Those worried me, but not extreme, because I felt like that was normal to a degree. But then, I guess from there, probably by about 20, maybe 21, he quit school his senior year. It's like, your senior year, Chase. But anyway, and it was already starting then. Like, I could tell he was changing. So he quit school his senior year. He did get his GED, went to work. He always wanted to do construction work, always wanted to be outside. But by about 22, I found a needle in his room, and he came to me and told me he was on heroin. And I'm like, heroin? Like, heroin? I don't even understand that. Like, I heard about that I thought that was what they did in the 70s. I had no idea that it was right there in Bardstown, where we lived. I had no idea. So I was like immediately called my husband, you gotta leave work, Chase is on heroin, called my mom, called his dad, everybody get over here. Chase is an IV user on heroin, you know, what happened? I couldn't even believe it. So from there, we started recovery, and it was hell. It was, go to this recovery. Well, we'll keep him 28 days. Go to this recovery. Well, what insurance does he have? Well, is he homicidal or suicidal? I could not get him help. I mean, one time I probably went to 5 different facilities in one day trying to get him help. So he was in and out of recovery. He would do well, he wouldn't do well. He would do okay, then he wouldn't. And then I think heroin got harder to find, and then he started using meth. And meth was a whole nightmare all in itself. It was a special kind of hell, because he went into a psychosis. And I like to never got him help for the psychosis, for the meth, for all of that was going on. So that was back and forth, and that was like 2018, 2019. Well, one night coming home from work, Chase got pulled over. He loved to ride motorcycles. Chase was always looking for that next thrill. He rode four-wheelers, he rode his motorcycle, anything that would give him some type of adrenaline. And I think that's what the drugs did. It was just like, he was always chasing that next high. And I don't know to this day what trauma, like I've looked back on what was that trauma in his life that he was trying to self-medicate from. His dad and I separated when he was 2. His dad struggled with a cocaine addiction in the 90s, but overcame it and does really well now. So is it hereditary? I don't know. I don't know what Chase's trauma was. Even with all the talks that we've had and all the time that we were together, I don't know what bothered him to where he was trying to self-medicate. But when he was on Suboxone. He was off and on Suboxone, and when things started, he got pulled over leaving work one night on his motorcycle, and they searched his motorcycle and he had heroin. So that landed him into the system. First time he had ever been into everything that he had been through, all the different recoveries, all the addiction, he had never fallen into the system. So that's where it started. And from there, he was on probation. He had to do drug screenings like you were talking about earlier. Well, he tested dirty 2 times. And like the night before, he was like, I know I'm gonna test positive for pot tomorrow. And he was like, that's the second one. And he had used a clean out kit that day, thought it was gonna work. And I was like, Chase, there's nothing I can do for you. There's nothing I can do. This is what you had to follow and you didn't follow it. So the next day at work, I was coming back from break and my cell phone rang. I'm like, hello? And he was like, Mom. And I was like, please don't tell me you're in jail. He said, I'm at the probation office. They're taking me to jail. Can you come get my car? I was like, yeah. And I was so upset and I started crying. I left work. I went and talked to the probation officer. I said, he doesn't need to be in jail. He needs recovery. And she was like, I know, but she didn't know. Like, I could just tell by the look on her face. And I was like, okay, what do I need to do to get him in recovery? So I started calling the judge's office and doing this and doing that. And they put him in jail. It was during COVID. I could not even come see him. Everything was shut down. They did a wean down kit to help him from being sick. I don't know what all he tested positive for. But he was in jail for 10 days. And we got him out. We got it approved. We were on a list. He would go to the first, it had to be DOC, Department of Corrections, under the state of Kentucky. They put him on the first available bed, and that ended up being in Earl Langer, which is in Covington. So they let me come pick him up. I picked him up from jail that morning, and I went and got him, and he came out of jail, and he was like, all I've wanted for 10 days is a hug, because he was like the best hugger. I mean, he would like envelop you. When he saw you, he hugged you. Even when his addiction, he never did lose that like love and caring that he had for us. I mean, we would go round and round because addiction is a different kind of animal, and it brings out something in him that he would have never been. But anyway, so he went to Earl Langer for 8 months, and that was during COVID, so I could not visit. But a couple of times he went to the doctor, and they let me come up there and get him, and I got to see him. And so he got out of there. He spent 8 months, and he got out 11. No, it was November 8th at 8 p.m. I knew there was a number there that I always remember. So they let him out at 8 p.m. And like 2 weeks before that, they give you your phone back. We brought him his vehicle. They give you that 2 weeks to figure out where you're gonna go, get a job, what are you gonna do? So Chase got his job, he got his car, he got his phone, and he lined up a sober living. So he went that night to the sober living, and they got him all situated. And then the very next day, he came back to Bardstown. He visited us. He was doing so good. Stayed in sober living, went to work. He was working right there by the airport in Cincinnati. They were rebuilding these crates that go on airplanes that carry the luggage, and working, doing so good. He was really loving life and being sober. And every other weekend, either I would go up there or he would come home. And I mean, we had family get-togethers and all of that. And then I don't know what happened, Well, I know he was having trouble sleeping because we had talked about it. And I was like, you need to see a therapist and see if they can get you a sleep med. And he had one appointment with the therapist, and then she was like, I talked to him that day, and he said she wants to see me 2 times and talk to me before she prescribes anything. Because it seemed like he was always battling those demons at night when he tried to sleep. And he was like, Mom, all my friends are dead. They've all died from addiction. And at night, I'm always thinking about them. So that like really haunted him. And he really had lost so many of his friends. So anyway, he was having trouble sleeping. And I know now, because I went through his phone, he had a friend that reached out to him. There was a girl, she was going to rehab, so she didn't need her script anymore. These are the things that I know to be true because I have his phone. So his friend, who's also in sober living, he reaches out to him. He was like, such and such girl is going to rehab. She doesn't need her script. And I have 2 in the text. It says K-Pen, which I know is generic for Klonopin. But since then, I've heard it was Xanax. Whatever it was, I know it was something to help chase his anxiety and sleep. So they came to Bardstown. They drove 2 hours that night to Bardstown and got her prescription. So they got back home and Chase took it and died. He took 1 pill. So the only thing in Chase's system was fentanyl. That was it. His buddy didn't take his pill that night. He got up the next morning and went to work, and he overdosed at work or poisoned, whatever you want to say. But he was around people. So they Narcaned him, I think 5 Narcans, did CPR, and then he ended up in the hospital for 4 or 5 days. And I reached out to him, and like you said, I don't think they knew fentanyl was in those pills. I've read the text. They completely believed they were going to get these Xanax from a girl that was going to rehab who no longer needed her prescription. So I don't know what happened. But anyway, so the next morning when Chase didn't go to work, one of his buddies from Sober Living, saw Chase's light on, hollered at him, and Chase was gone. And the coroner told me the amount of fentanyl, he would have died within 1 to 2 minutes of taking it. And they did. There was 1 pill that was beside his bed, so they assumed he took one. And that pill, they did a field test on it, and it was pure fentanyl. And that's where I'm at today.
So because a lot of people have questions, did you work with the police at all?
They did nothing.
Nothing. Did you bring the phone to the police?
Yeah, they didn't want the phone. The police were there. So, and this was real crappy. We found out Chase passed on Facebook. I'm still waiting for the police to come tell me. And people started seeing Rest in Peace Chase, and they start calling me, because I hadn't been on Facebook that morning. I had a doctor's appointment in Louisville. And I'm like, his best friend called me in such a panic, and he was like, Tami, is it true? And I was like, what's going on? And he was like, they're putting Rest in Peace on Chase's Facebook page. And I'm like, what? So, and like his call went to my phone, was bam, bam, bam. And his aunt called and she was like, this is his dad's sister. She's like, what is going on, Tami? I was like, Amanda, I have no idea. I was like, Hardesty called and now my phone's blowing up. And she said, I'm gonna call one of the people that are posting it. I will call you right back. So she called me right back and she was like, Tami, you need to call this number. Well, when she didn't call back and say Chase is okay, I knew. So I called his dad and I was like, I can't call, you got to call. And his dad called back. He said, do you want an autopsy? And I said, I want a toxicology report. And like in between all this, his best friend was already telling me Chase was coming to Bardstown. They were supposed to be picking up a pill from somebody. So I'm already knowing like something's going on. And I said, I need a toxicology report. And the police were there. So they were just like, he died in this sober living. He's an addict. Nobody cared. So then my mom got on the phone to get his body brought back to the funeral home, and like, so she was trying to do all the logistics because I was not in any place to be doing it, and his dad was. So the next morning we went to the sober living. The people that own it met us there, and they were pretty much like, yeah, we see this all the time. And I was like, did you find any needles? Did you find anything that made you believe that Chase was using again or anything? And they were like, no, just that pill. And I was like, I want a police report. So I contacted the police. They sent me the report, and they just put on there, you know, they said that such and such came down that morning. Chase's light was on. He wasn't moving. They went in there. And it said no foul play suspected. And then on his death certificate, they put fentanyl overdose, prior street drug usage, multiple overdose. That's it.
So that was the police where he was found?
Yes.
So what about the police in Bardstown?
Bardstown, nothing. They don't care. And like I tried to tell them, they never use the girl's name for the prescription. They say girl, so I don't know that girl. And like I've tried to find out, and somebody told me this girl left for rehab the day after Chase passed, and I reached out to her, and I almost believe it was her because she distanced herself from it, and she was like, I never even knew Chase passed till I saw it on Facebook. I thought, yeah, me neither, but what's that got to do with anything? So no, and I have no idea. And Drew, I reached out to him. He was with Chase. Yes, I know you overdosed the next day, but do not tell me you don't know where you went and got those pills. He says he doesn't remember anything of that day. Really? You drove 2 hours here to get them from a girl, and you drove 2 hours back, but now you don't remember anything.
So we know it wasn't a prescription.
Yeah.
We know it wasn't real because you don't get fentanyl pills from pharmacies.
No.
So it was just a girl making that up to get money or sell pills. And yeah.
It's like, I don't know. It's like, did the girl, did she buy it and believe that what she had was legitimate? Because my thought was, if you knew that was fentanyl when Chase pulled up, you should have just shot him in the driveway, because he had 15 months sobriety. He was, and like, what's ironic, and like, I know you've talked about this, people seeking fentanyl, I would always like try to talk to Chase. I was like, this was when he got out of Erlanger. I'm like, you know, you're in sober living, but you're free to do whatever you want. How are your cravings? He was like, they're not really bad, Mom, because the only thing out there is fentanyl, and I don't want any part of fentanyl. He said, now if I knew I could get some heroin, and you know, he kind of looked at me, and I was like, Chase, he was like, I'm teasing. He was like, but I know there's nothing out there. He knew it. He knew about fentanyl, and he still took a pill that he believed legitimately was something else.
Now, you're just not his mom saying this, but there's no way he knew fentanyl was in there.
No, I know that. I read the text. And if Chase was seeking fentanyl, like, I've always been that mom, like, no, my son struggles with addiction. No, here we are, he's in psychosis. And if he was seeking fentanyl, I would tell you he was. Like, there's some things that you're not sure about, there's some things that you know to be true, and there's things that I know to be true because of what I heard Chase say and what I read in the text. And Chase in no way knew that was fentanyl.
So what's your message now to people? Like, I guess different messages to families, to parents, and then
It is.
to other Chases, but
I know I have grandkids by my stepdaughters. Chase was my only child. But like just a few weeks ago, I asked my 13-year-old grandson, I was like, if somebody gave you a pill in school, what would you do? If they told you, if you said your head hurt or you were tired and they said, I've got this, and he was like, I wouldn't take it. I know that's what killed Uncle Chase. And I was like, okay. I knew you knew, and I know, but I had to say it out loud because we've talked about it. We don't keep it a secret. We know Chase struggled with addiction, but we also know he had 15 months sobriety, and he took a pill, and he died within minutes. So my message is, if it didn't come from a pharmacy, do not take it. That's for the young kids out there that are being bombarded. And for parents, please talk to your kids. I felt like I always tried to talk to Chase, but it still happened to our family. And I also say, please don't think they're living under a bridge and they're the homeless person with a sign. They're not. They're your kids and my kids that come from normal homes, that went to church on Sunday, that went to Chase grew up in a Catholic school. He grew up with love. I mean, don't think it won't happen to you, because it can and it will.